Her sister took her partner once more. Then the Alpha King discovered the hidden Omega. Snow draped the land like a fragile veil, and the wind carried whispers from ancient ruins and forgotten castles. In this land, where magic hummed faintly beneath the earth, hearts could break as easily as bones, and trust could vanish like mist. Elara stood at the edge of the cliffs, her dark hair whipping around her face, her eyes fixed on the frozen sea below. The storm that had passed left only silence and the faint scent of salt and pine. She hugged her cloak tighter, but it offered little warmth. Tonight her heart felt as cold as the land itself. Her sister, Lysandra, had taken him again. Kalen, the man whose name had been a song in her heart for years, had once more turned toward Lysandra's light, ignoring the shadows of longing Elara carried quietly. The humiliation burned fresh inside her as she remembered the ball earlier that evening. She had watched from a distance as Lysandra laughed, her hand resting lightly on Kalen's arm, his eyes dazzled by her smile. Elara's lips pressed into a thin line. It had been the same story for years. Each time she had hoped, and each time her hopes had been dashed. She had learned to hide her sorrow, to speak in polite tones, to avoid the cruel games of her sister. Yet inside, a storm raged, a storm that no cloak could keep out. She turned away from the cliffs and began the long walk back to her family's estate. The snow crunched beneath her boots, each step echoing in the empty forest like a heartbeat. She whispered to herself, though the wind could never hear, "Why can't he see me? Why can't he see me?" In the quiet of her room, she drew the curtains against the gray light, wrapping herself in a blanket. The fire sputtered in the hearth, offering faint warmth, but not enough to reach her heart. She picked up a small crystal pendant from the table, a gift from her mother, long gone, who had once told her that true strength could come from silence and patience. Elara closed her eyes, holding the crystal tightly. She wished for courage, for someone to see her as more than a shadow, as more than the sister left behind. And then the wind shifted. The flames of the fire danced wildly, though no door had opened, no candle had fallen. Elara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. A presence lingered in the room, a feeling heavy, commanding, and impossible to ignore. "Who's there?" she asked softly, though her voice trembled. A shadow moved in the corner of the room, tall and unyielding. From it emerged a man, his form tall and regal, his eyes like steel tempered by midnight. Elara froze, recognizing him instantly in the stories whispered across the kingdom. Valric, the Alpha King, ruler of the northern lands, known for his ruthless strength and legendary control over his people. No one had ever entered her home without permission, yet here he was, as if drawn by something invisible, something only he could sense. "I know who you are," Valric said, his voice low, smooth, and commanding, "and I know what you hide." Elara's heart skipped a beat. She had spent years hiding her secret. She was an Omega, yes, but not just any Omega. The old stories spoke of a hidden Omega, one whose power could challenge even the strongest Alpha. She had never spoken of it, not to Kalen, not to Lysandra, not to anyone. Yet here was the Alpha King himself, speaking as if he had looked into her soul. I don't know what you mean," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Valric stepped closer, his presence filling the room. He did not smile, yet there was a gravity to him that made her heart race. "Don't hide from me, child," he said. "The spirits whisper your name. The land itself has marked you. You are the Omega the prophecy spoke of, and your time is coming." Elara's mind raced. A prophecy, her power. She had felt its stirrings before, small things, whispers of spirits, flickers of energy when her emotions were strong. But she had never imagined it could draw the attention of the Alpha King himself. She wanted to deny it, to shrink back into the safety of her room, yet something in his gaze held her in place. I'm nothing special," she murmured. "You are more than you know," Valric said, "more than your sister can ever understand. And more than Kalen will ever see, unless you awaken it fully." The mention of Kaelin's name twisted something inside her, a mixture of longing and pain. She had loved him quietly for years, her heart tethered to him even as Lysandra's laughter and cunning stole him away time and again. Yet now, in the presence of this powerful alpha, she felt a strange mixture of fear and fascination. Valric continued, his tone softening almost imperceptibly. You have a choice. You can hide in the shadows and they will continue to take what is yours, or you can step into the light, claim what is within you, and change everything. Alara's hands trembled as she clutched the crystal pendant. Change everything. Could she dare to hope? Could she dare to step forward when her heart had been broken so many times? Before she could answer, a sudden noise shattered the moment. A knock at the door, hesitant but deliberate. Lysandra's voice, honeyed and sharp, called from outside. Alara, are you in there? Kaelin is looking for you. Alara's chest tightened. Kaelin. She could imagine him now, tall and strong, a mixture of worry and confusion on his face, caught in Lysandra's orbit yet somehow tethered to her in memory. The thought made her pulse ache. Valric's eyes darkened, a shadow passing across his expression. Do not let her distract you, he said. This is not about her. This is about you, your power, your destiny. Alara nodded, though her mind was torn. She wanted to run to Kaelin, to confront the ache in her chest, to demand his heart for her alone. But something deeper called to her, a voice older than the mountains, a whisper from the spirits she had learned to listen to. They called her name, urging her to rise, to claim what was hers. The knock came again, more insistent. Alara felt the weight of choice pressing on her. To remain hidden, as she always had, or to step forward into the unknown, into power and perhaps danger, and into the path that might finally bring her freedom. Her fingers tightened around the crystal. She lifted her chin, meeting Valric's gaze. I will listen, she said, her voice trembling but steady. Teach me, show me what I can do. Valric's lips curved in a faint shadow of a smile, approving yet unreadable. Good, he said. The path will not be easy. But if you succeed, you will be stronger than you ever imagined. And those who think they own you will finally see that you are not to be taken lightly. Outside, the wind howled across the cliffs, carrying with it the distant echoes of the storm. Alara felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration, as if standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into a new world. Kaelin, Lysandra, the whispers of the court, none of it mattered now. She had taken the first step toward her own destiny. And then a shadow flickered at the edge of her vision, not Valric's, not hers, but something darker, older. A presence that had waited for her awakening. Her heart skipped a beat, and a shiver ran down her spine. The room seemed to contract, the air thickening with tension and expectation. Alara's eyes widened. What is that? She whispered. Valric's expression darkened, his hand reaching to the hilt of the sword at his side. Patience, he said, though his voice carried an edge of warning. All in time, but know this, your life will never be the same again. The night deepened, wrapping the room in shadow and anticipation. Alara clutched her pendant, feeling its warmth against her palm, and looked toward the edge of the cliff where the storm had passed. Somewhere in the cold, frozen kingdom, a new chapter of her life had begun. A chapter of power, of choice, and perhaps of love that had yet to be revealed. Her heart, so long broken, fluttered with something dangerous and new, hope. And in the distance, the wind carried a voice she could almost hear, whispering her name, promising that nothing would ever be the same. The first light of dawn crept over the jagged cliffs of Eloria, casting pale gold across the frost-covered land. Alara stood at her window, the cold breeze brushing against her face, and watched the distant forest sway like restless spirits. Her heart still raced from the events of the night before. Valric, the Alpha King, had come to her room, spoken her truth, and seen the power she had spent a lifetime hiding. She had thought her greatest fear was losing Kaelin again to her sister, but now she understood there was something far larger at play. A destiny that demanded courage, a force that could not be denied. Yet the thought of Valric's gaze, commanding and sharp, lingered in her mind. She had never felt anyone see her so completely, and it both frightened and thrilled her. The morning was broken by a commotion outside. Soldiers, clad in black and silver, moved through the village, their armor clinking softly in the crisp air. Among them she saw Valric, riding a massive black stallion, his presence cutting through the frost like fire through ice. He dismounted near her home and approached her with the calm authority of a king accustomed to command. "Ilara," he called, his voice carrying over the square. "It is time." Ilara's pulse quickened. "Time for what?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "To step forward," he said. "To awaken what lies within you and to understand your power. You cannot hide forever. The spirits, the land, even your enemies all watch for you. If you do not claim your strength, others will shape your life for you." She swallowed hard. Kalen's face flashed in her mind, his kindness, his strength, and the confusion that always shadowed his eyes when Lysandra was near. She longed to run to him, to feel his hand in hers, but Valric's presence held her in place. She knew instinctively that her training, her awakening, must come first. Valric extended his hand. "Will you come?" Ilara hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Her boots crunched through the frost as she followed him into the forest, where the sunlight filtered through the skeletal branches, creating silver patterns on the snow. The air was alive with magic, and she could feel it whispering to her, urging her to open her senses. They walked in silence for a while until they reached a clearing surrounded by ancient stones, blackened with age and engraved with runes she did not understand. Valric stopped, turning to face her. "This is where your journey begins," he said. "The spirits that watch over Eloria recognize your gift. They will guide you if you allow them. But first, you must learn control, the ability to shape your power, to awaken it without fear." Ilara's fingers trembled as she traced the runes on the stones. She felt a warmth rising from them, a pulse beneath her skin that matched the rhythm of her heart. I don't know if I can," she admitted. "You can," Valric said firmly. "Fear is natural. It is the chains that bind weak hearts. You are not weak, Ilara. You are stronger than you realize." The lessons began that day, simple at first. Valric taught her to sense the energy in the air, to listen to the whispers of the spirits, and to focus her emotions into a calm center. She struggled at first, her mind racing with doubt, her heart still aching for Kalen. But gradually she began to feel the stirrings of her power. Small sparks of light flickered at her fingertips, faint and tentative, like embers waiting for wind. Valric watched her closely, correcting her stance, guiding her breath, and at times testing her with challenges that made her heart race. His methods were strict, his words sharp, yet there was a gentleness in his gaze when he saw her succeed. Ilara found herself drawn to the complexity of him, the fierce authority and the subtle care. She could not name the feelings it stirred, but she knew they were dangerous. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the snow in gold and crimson, Ilara finally managed to summon a flicker of energy that danced across her hands like living fire. She gasped, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. Valric's eyes gleamed. "Well done. You are learning quickly." Her cheeks flushed, but pride was mixed with fear. She knew that every step she took toward power also drew attention from those who would wish to control or destroy her. And of course, attention from Kalen, who had no idea what she was becoming. Kalen. She thought of him often, even as Valric pushed her limits. The way his brow furrowed when he was troubled, the warmth of his hand when it brushed hers, the quiet confidence in his voice. She longed to see him, to explain, to reach him before Lysandra could twist his heart again. But for now, she had to focus. She had to become more than the girl who had watched from the shadows. As evening fell, Valric instructed her to meditate at the center of the stone circle. The cold bit at her fingers and toes, but she forced herself to sit, focusing on her breathing and the pulsing energy around her. Slowly, The sparks grew stronger, until she could see them shimmering like tiny stars around her hands. She reached out with her mind, feeling the presence of the spirits, their whispers guiding her, teaching her, encouraging her. Suddenly, a shadow flitted across the edge of the clearing. Alara's eyes snapped open. Lysandra. She had followed them, silent as a wolf, her eyes gleaming with curiosity and mischief. Alara, Lysandra called, her voice sweet but edged with venom. What are you doing out here in the cold, training with the Alpha King? How interesting. Alara's heart leapt. Kaelin's name wanted to slip from her lips, but she held it back. You shouldn't be here, she said firmly, her voice steadier than she felt. Lysandra stepped closer, her smile sharp as frost. Oh, I am here because I care, she said. You are so fragile, so quiet. It's almost sad, watching you try to rise when you've always been in the shadows. Alara's hands glowed faintly, sparks dancing along her skin. She clenched them, forcing the power to simmer rather than erupt. I am not fragile, she said, her voice gaining strength. And I am not in the shadows anymore. Valric stepped beside her, his presence imposing, a shield between her and Lysandra. Step back, he commanded. You underestimate her as all others do, and it will cost you dearly if you continue. Lysandra's smile faltered, a flicker of uncertainty passing across her face. She had always been the one to command attention, to bend hearts to her will, but now she felt the shift in the air. Something in Alara had changed, something powerful, something that could no longer be ignored. I see, Lysandra said finally, her voice calm but edged with something sharper. Very well, I will leave you to your training. She turned and vanished into the trees, silent as snow falling on frozen ground. Alara exhaled shakily. The encounter had left her unsettled but also strangely emboldened. If she could control this power, if she could master it fully, she would never again be the one left behind. Kaelin would see her for who she truly was, not just a shadow, not just a sister of Lysandra, but someone strong, someone extraordinary. Valric studied her, his gaze unreadable. That was a test, he said quietly. Not from me, but from fate. She will try again, and Kaelin will be caught in the middle. You must be ready for him, for her, and for the choices you will face. Alara nodded, her jaw set. I will be ready, she said. The night fell over the clearing, wrapping the world in darkness and frost. Stars sparkled above like distant flames, and the energy around the stones pulsed faintly, responding to Alara's presence. She felt a thrill unlike any she had known, the thrill of power, of awakening, of destiny calling. And in that quiet moment she heard it again, a whisper, softer than the wind, yet unmistakable. Alara, her breath caught. The voice was familiar and her heart leapt. Not Valric's, not Lysandra's, Kaelin. She closed her eyes, imagining him there, and for a fleeting moment she felt hope bloom. Hope that he might see her. Hope that love, even in a world of shadows and power, could survive. But even as hope stirred, so did uncertainty. She knew the path ahead would not be easy. Her power, Valric, Kaelin, Lysandra, all of it tangled like roots beneath the frost-covered ground. Every step she took could change everything. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the trees, a shadow watched, waiting. Alara shivered, not from the cold but from the promise of what was to come. The hunt had begun, and she was at its center. The forest outside Eloria's northern walls was alive with shadow and whisper. Alara moved carefully, her cloak brushing the frost-tipped grass, her heart heavy with both fear and determination. Valric had insisted she leave the village for safety and training. He claimed that the hidden Omega's awakening drew attention that could be dangerous if her enemies discovered her. She had left reluctantly, but as she walked among the trees, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, she realized that being alone with Valric had given her something she had never known: clarity. Her power was growing, and so was the understanding that it came with responsibility. She could not afford to let Lysandra or anyone else control her life again. Valric followed her at a distance, silent as a shadow, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. He had become more than a mentor, a presence that filled the space around her, strong, commanding, and oddly comforting. Each lesson, each word carried both challenge and promise. "Alara," Valric said, breaking the quiet, "do you understand why your power is rare?" She shook her head. I think I do, but it feels like too much sometimes. The spirits, the energy, it overwhelms me." "That is natural," he said. "A gift like yours is not easy. It requires control, patience, and courage. You will learn to harness it. And soon, you will understand that it can protect more than just yourself." They stopped at a clearing where the air shimmered with faint light. Ancient stones formed a circle, etched with runes that pulsed faintly as Alara approached. She could feel the energy coursing around her, alive and aware. "Focus," Valric instructed. "Listen to the spirits, they will teach you." Alara closed her eyes, letting the world fall away. She felt the cold beneath her, the brush of wind against her skin, and then something deeper. A current of power that moved through the earth, through her veins, through her very being. She raised her hands and the energy answered, swirling around her in silver arcs. Suddenly, a sharp cry echoed through the trees. Alara opened her eyes to see a figure running toward them. Kalen. His expression was a mixture of fear, determination, and confusion. "Alara," he shouted. "Lysandra, she's planning something. She's going to." Valric stepped forward, his presence stopping Kalen in his tracks. "Step back," he commanded, his voice like iron. "Do not interfere unless I give you leave." Kalen hesitated, but his eyes stayed on Alara. "She won't stop," he said. "She'll take everything, me, everything you care about. You need to—" "Alara, control your power," Valric interrupted sharply. "You cannot fight with emotion alone. If you let her anger dictate your actions, you will fail." Alara felt torn. Kalen's words pulled at her heart, but Valric's guidance pulled at her mind. She closed her eyes again, letting the energy calm, focusing on the clarity he had taught her. Sparks of light circled her fingers, then spread into the air, forming a protective dome around her and Valric. Kalen watched, awe and fear battling in his gaze. "Good," Valric said, his voice almost approving. "You are learning, but the real test is coming. Lysandra will not wait, she will act, and you must be ready." Kalen's gaze softened, and Alara felt a pang of longing. She wanted to reach for him, to tell him that she had always loved him, that no matter what Lysandra had done, her heart remained his. But she could not. Not yet. She had to be strong for herself and for him. That night they camped in the forest. The fire crackled, throwing dancing shadows across their faces. Valric spoke little, but his presence was heavy, and Alara felt the weight of responsibility pressing down. Kalen sat near her, his eyes flicking to her hands, still glowing faintly from the training. "Your power, it's incredible," he said softly. "I've never seen anything like it." Alara looked down, her fingers trembling. "It's dangerous too," she admitted. "I'm not sure I can control it all the time." "You will," Kalen said. "I believe in you. You've always had something Lysandra could never take." A faint warmth spread through Alara's chest at his words, but it was quickly shadowed by the memory of her sister's smile, Lysandra's cunning and relentless pursuit of Kalen's heart. She clenched her hands in her lap, forcing herself to focus on the task at hand. The next days passed in a mixture of training and caution. Alara grew stronger, her energy more controlled, her connection with the spirits deeper. She learned to manipulate the currents of power, to sense danger before it came, and to awaken subtle abilities in those nearby. Kalen watched in quiet amazement, often unable to hide his concern for her safety. But Lysandra was always present, even when absent. Word reached them that she had gathered followers loyal only to her, spreading whispers and threats through the villages, destabilizing the northern lands. Valric grew increasingly concerned. "Alara," he said one evening, "Lysandra's ambitions are greater than you imagine. She does not act for love, only for power, and she will stop at nothing." Alara's stomach tightened. She thought of Kalen, of how easily he was swayed by her sister's charm. "We have to stop her," she said, her voice firm, "before she hurts anyone else." Valric nodded. "And we will, but you must understand this fight is not only against her. It is against fear, doubt, and the limits you place on yourself. Only when you embrace your true strength will you prevail." The night before the planned confrontation, Alara could not sleep. She walked through the forest, letting the cold wind wake her senses. The moonlight cast silver paths across the snow, and she felt the spirits moving closer, surrounding her with quiet encouragement. A soft sound made her turn. Kalen stepped out from behind a tree, his expression unreadable. "You're leaving me behind," he said quietly. "I'm not leaving you," she replied. "I'm preparing. I can't face her without control. I can't protect you without control." Kalen shook his head. "You don't have to do this alone." Alara looked at him, seeing the worry and love in his eyes. She wanted to reach for him, to hold him, to tell him everything she had never said. But she also knew she had to be strong to face Lysandra and whatever darkness she had summoned. "I have to do this," she said softly, "for both of us." Kalen stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then I will follow, not as your protector but as your partner. Whatever happens, we face it together." Alara felt a surge of emotion she could barely contain. His words gave her strength, yet also a fear, the fear of losing him if she failed. She nodded, tears prickling her eyes, and allowed a small smile to form. The following morning, they moved toward Lysandra's stronghold. The journey was tense, every rustle in the trees, every shadow among the snow, a potential threat. Valric led the way, silent and watchful, while Alara and Kalen moved side by side, their hands brushing occasionally, sending sparks of warmth through both of them. When they reached the edge of Lysandra's camp, the sight stole their breath. Followers swarmed like black ants, preparing for a ritual that pulsed with dark energy. Lysandra stood at the center, her eyes gleaming with excitement and malice. "Alara," she called, her voice carrying across the clearing. "I've been waiting for this moment. You think you can challenge me. You think you can control what you barely understand." Alara stepped forward, her hands glowing faintly, her voice steady. "I am not afraid of you," she said, "and I will not let you hurt anyone else." Valric moved to flank her, his armor glinting in the rising sun, while Kalen took his place on her other side. Together, they formed a united front, a force Lysandra had not anticipated. Lysandra's smile faltered, and for the first time she hesitated. The air shimmered with tension, and Alara felt the energy inside her surge, ready to be unleashed. She looked at Kalen and Valric, and in that moment she knew that power, courage, and love were not separate. They were one. The first strike of the coming battle was about to begin. The morning sky burned with gold and crimson as Alara, Kalen, and Valric approached the edge of Lysandra's stronghold. The fortress rose like a jagged tooth from the frozen earth, its black stone walls lined with the dark energy that Lysandra had summoned. Snow swirled around them, carried by the bitter wind, yet inside the circle of their small group, a quiet warmth lingered, a calm before the storm. Alara felt the pulse of her power stronger than ever. The energy hummed in her veins, responding to the tension in the air. The spirits whispered, circling around her, guiding her, urging her to act. She glanced at Kalen, who walked beside her with a fierce determination, his jaw set and eyes fixed on the fortress. He had been silent since they left the forest, conserving his strength, his gaze often flicking to hers with quiet concern. Valric moved just ahead, his presence commanding. "She will not wait for us," he said. "Lysandra knows you are here. She knows your power is awakening. Be ready for anything." Alara took a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill her lungs. "I am ready," she said, though inside her chest, fear and anticipation twisted together like the roots of an ancient tree. The first signs of Lysandra's ritual were clear as they approached the outer courtyard. Shadows writhed unnaturally, curling across the stone like living creatures. Lysandra stood at the center of a dark circle, her hands raised, chanting words that made the air shimmer with tension. Her followers knelt around her, their faces masked in anticipation and devotion. Ilara's heart beat faster. This was the moment she had been preparing for. Every lesson Valric had taught, every flicker of energy she had summoned, every whispered guidance from the spirits, it all led to this. She stepped forward, hands glowing with silver light, and felt the warmth spread through her entire being. Kalen moved beside her, placing a hand lightly on her arm. "We are with you," he said softly. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Ilara nodded, a surge of courage flooding through her. She turned toward Lysandra. "It ends now," she called, her voice steady, carrying across the courtyard. "No more harm, no more fear." Lysandra's eyes widened briefly, just enough for Ilara to see the cracks in her sister's confidence. "You think you can stop me," she said, her voice sharp and cold. "You are still a child playing with fire." Ilara did not hesitate. She focused, feeling the spirits swirl around her, lending their strength. Her hands moved in a controlled rhythm, and the silver energy leapt into the air, forming arcs that shimmered and danced. The shadows around Lysandra faltered, bending away from the purity of her light. Valric stepped forward, his sword glowing faintly as he reinforced Ilara's power. Kalen followed, his own energy responding to hers, creating a circle of strength that surrounded them all. Lysandra's followers faltered, fear creeping into their hearts as they sensed the power opposing them. "Your time is over, Lysandra," Ilara said, her voice rising with authority. "No longer will you control or deceive. Step down." Lysandra's hands trembled, and for a brief moment the mask of confidence slipped from her face. Then, rage replaced it, and she lashed out with dark energy, twisting it into tendrils that surged toward Ilara. Ilara met the attack with calm focus, raising her hands. The silver light expanded, forming a protective barrier that absorbed the darkness. The force pressed against her, but she held firm, drawing on everything she had learned, on every lesson Valric had taught her, and on the strength of her own heart. Kalen joined in, reaching toward the energy, reinforcing it with his own will. Together, their combined power formed a dome of light that pushed back the shadows. Lysandra screamed, the sound echoing across the courtyard, a mixture of anger, fear, and frustration. "You can't stop me," Lysandra shouted. "I am stronger than you. I will not be defeated." "You are not stronger," Ilara said, her voice unwavering. "Strength is not measured by fear or control. True strength comes from courage, love, and the will to protect." The energy within Ilara surged. She felt the spirits lend her their full force, wrapping around her like a mantle of light. With a final, focused push, she directed the energy toward Lysandra, not to harm, but to strip away the darkness that clouded her sister's heart. The tendrils of shadow recoiled, unraveling into harmless strands of fading mist. Lysandra fell to her knees, breathing hard, her power broken, her ambition stripped away. She looked up at Ilara, fear and regret flickering in her eyes. You've changed," she whispered. I did." Ilara stepped forward, the silver light still surrounding her, and extended a hand. "It's not too late," she said gently. "You can choose another path, one that does not hurt others." Lysandra hesitated, then took the hand, trembling. The moment felt fragile, like the first snow of winter melting under sunlight. Kalen exhaled softly, his relief evident, and Valric's gaze softened just slightly, approving yet cautious. For the first time, Ilara felt the weight of her journey shift. She had faced the darkness within and outside herself, and she had emerged stronger, not only in power but in spirit. Kalen stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You saved her and all of us." Ilara looked at him, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and longing. "We did it," she said, acknowledging his support, his presence, and the courage they had shared. The fortress, once dark and menacing, seemed to breathe with a lighter energy. The followers of Lysandra, now free from her influence, slowly withdrew, murmuring in awe at the display of power they had witnessed. The snow sparkled like crystals, and the wind carried a sense of renewal. Valric watched them all, his expression unreadable, though there was a faint shadow of pride in his eyes. "Alara," he said, "you have proven that the hidden Omega is not to be underestimated. Your strength, courage, and wisdom have reshaped this day. Remember this, for there will always be challenges ahead." Alara nodded, feeling the truth of his words. She had grown, not just in power but in understanding. Her heart, once weighed with longing and sorrow, now carried hope, courage, and the knowledge that she could face whatever came next. Kalen stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers. "Alara," he said softly, I've always believed in you. Now I hope you can let me be by your side, not as someone to protect you, but as someone who stands with you." Alara's heart quickened. She had longed for this moment, yet the weight of her own growth and the journey ahead reminded her to move carefully. She took his hand, feeling the warmth and steadiness in his touch. "Yes," she said softly, "we stand together, always." The sun reached its zenith, scattering light across the snow, and for a moment the world felt at peace. Lysandra, though humbled, had a chance to rebuild, to seek redemption in her own way. Kalen and Alara had found a balance between love, trust, and strength. Valric's presence remained, a reminder of power, guidance, and the larger world beyond their immediate victories. As Alara looked across the frost-covered land, she realized that the kingdom of Eloria was no longer a place of shadows and fear. It was a place where courage could shine, where hearts could heal, and where destinies could be reshaped. Yet even in this moment of triumph, the wind carried a whisper, soft, almost imperceptible, like a breath across the snow. The spirit stirred, reminding her that the world was vast, full of mysteries, dangers, and possibilities still waiting to be discovered. Alara closed her eyes, feeling the silver light of her power pulse gently through her hands. She knew her journey was far from over, but she was no longer afraid. With Kalen by her side, Valric guiding when needed, and the strength she had claimed within herself, she was ready for whatever the future held. She opened her eyes, meeting Kalen's gaze. Together they stepped forward from the fortress, into the snow-filled courtyard, their hands clasped, hearts aligned, and spirits unbroken. And in the distance, the mountains shimmered with the light of possibility, promising that the hidden Omega had only just begun to shape her destiny.